Hello, everyone. Good morning. Thank you so much for joining me on this session. Um, so, a little bit of introduction here. My name is Abel Adugam Ayuba. I'm a 19-year-old founder and CEO of a company called Adugam. We are a British-based software development conglomerate that build innovative products and launch to market. I'm also a GitLab hero and also a foodie. So for some of us that might be foodies also, you're not alone. So yeah, we're in this together. So today we'll be talking about building for the next billion users. We'll be talking about who are the next billion users and then how we will build for the next billion user. Either you're an app developer or a startup founder or working in a big tech company. This talk should be able to help you in understanding some certain key things while building for the next billion users. So first of all, who are the next billion users? Who are the sets of the users you'll be working with? So the thing is, the next billion users will be people that are, say, let me use the word TikTok generation. So what do I mean by TikTok generation? I'm talking about users that want to use your application fast. They don't want to spend any time or they don't want to waste any time while using your application. They want to be able to use your application very simply and very easy. They don't want to spend their time figuring out how and what this function do and all of that. They just want to get it fast, easy, and also to be convenient for them. So you as an app developer, you have to put this key consideration into your mindset while building an application for a lot of people. So next we'll be talking about how you could build, how will you build for the next billion users? What should you do and what should you not do while developing as an app developer? So first of all, you have to consider the major part, which is the problem. You have to understand what problem you're solving for your users. What is their pain point? What is your software trying to solve? And all of that. You have to do that. So I usually tell people put problem solving first before functionalities. So don't just build your application based on functionalities. Rather focus on solving their problems. Because if you tend to build an application that revolves around features, every application can have that same feature. But when you solve the problem for your users, you're most likely to keep your users active and using your platform and all of that. Now, the next thing is to understand that you're going to be building for different device range you're going to be dealing with. So if this was a physical conference, I'll probably ask who has an Android phone, who has an iPhone, who uses a Google Pixels, who uses an iPhone X, iPhone 7, and all of that. Now, one major thing about all of these devices is they have different screen sizes and different screen resolution. How will you as an app developer figure that out when you know that all your users are not going to be using the same phone? So personally, when I started developing, I built an application which was working perfectly on my phone, just for me to try it on another person's phone and a button was not showing. So you don't want that. You don't want that to happen. So what I would say is you should be able to leverage on technologies that allow you to that allows your application to be flexible across different devices. So I will give you an example. You can, if you're developing for cross-platform application, you're likely going to go with Flutter because Flutter was built on the concept of web view. So you notice how you use a website on your Mac, and then when you get to your phone, the whole website is responsive based on the device you're using. So Flutter was built on that. There are other technologies that are also built on that base. So if you're able to leverage on those technologies, you spend less time figuring what dimensions your users are going to be using, how your application is going to be interacted with on different screen sizes. Now, you should also be able to lower your app memory's usage. Now, don't build an application that consumes your users' storage or memory. So another story is when I also started developing. At first, I built the application, and then after compiling, I tested it on like a couple of devices, and all of those devices crashed. Reason being that I was consuming a lot of my users' memory, so it was not efficient. So it just crashes and all of that. So you don't want that to happen. You should put in mind that your users are not going to be using the same phone. They're going to be using different phones or perhaps even different devices and all of that. Now, I put together some couple of devices. You can see that the tablet has a different screen size. The smartwatch also has a different resolution entirely at all. You also have your iPhones, you also have your different system Mac and the Windows PC. All of this, you have to put that in consideration. Now, imagine you are having a billion users. You're having 1,000 people downloading your application. Now, obviously, your users won't be from the same country. Your users won't be from one continent. You will have different people from different parts of the world using your application. You also have the same people speaking different dialects. So a user, like say 20% of your users might be speaking Dutch, say 30 Portuguese, 40% English, and a lot of different dialects. Now, how will your application be used by those users if you only serve them in English and then I speak Dutch and I don't probably understand English? Now, I will most likely uninstall your app, or if I have to use your app, I'll find it difficult to use your application. Now, localization means you giving your users content in, yeah, their local content. So imagine you have an application that says does payment and all of that. You should be able to have your content in different, say, dialects ranging from cities. So if I'm a person, if I'm your user using your application and I'm a Dutch person in the Netherlands, I should be able to have the option to change my language from English to Dutch or Portuguese. I can decide to change it from English to Portuguese and all of that. Your users should have that control. And when they do, they will really appreciate and most likely to interact properly with your. Same thing goes to connectivity. Your users, as I said earlier, won't be from the same place, meaning that their connectivity will vary. And even if they have a strong bandwidth, sometimes the bandwidth can fluctuate and all of that. How will your app be able, how will your user use your application when he has a little change in bandwidth signals and all of that? How will I be able to interact with your application? Now, as a developer, you should be able to put that in consideration when developing. You should be able to make your users interact with your application, even if the signal is not strong. So what do I mean by that? I mean, you should be able to keep some functionalities or some things on the app without using the internet. So say when I go online, it fetches some data and then just stores it on my local device so that even if I'm having fluctuation in my connectivity, I will probably not notice until I have to use, say, part of the application that really requires internet. That will probably when I will notice it. So you can store, I will also say you should leverage on technologies that allows you that. Firebase is one that allows you to store data offline, so your users can interact offline, and when they're online, they can just push that data to their database and all of that. Also, handle images properly. Do not put a 5 MB picture on your application. That's like very, very terrible. Now imagine you have just 3 images and then all of those images are 5 MB. That's already 15 MB. Personally, also, when I started developing, I built an application, and then when compiling, it reached about 150 MB, and then the application was just crashing. I spent a couple of days trying to figure out what was wrong, and then I discovered that I was using huge images on my application. You shouldn't do that. try and compress so you can leverage on you can work with the design team and all of that to give you simple and like less bulky images. So probably 11 KB and all of that will be a good fit for your images. Do not overload your application with heavy images. That would not be good. Now, one thing the human race wants is authoritativeness or control at some level. So everybody wants to feel certain things. Now, it's not just applicable in the day-to-day life. Even in your application usage, it applies there. Your users want to be able to control certain things. So I spoke about earlier about languages. Your users want to change the languages. Your users probably want to change their background color. So you probably give them blue and they're not a big fan of blue. They probably want to go with red. You can change that. You can allow them to change that. Or you have a text of probably 2 pixels. They don't want 2 pixels. They want their text to be larger. Give them that control. Make your application that flexible to allow your users feel in control of manipulating data at their fingertips and all of that. Now, earlier too, I spoke about APK size. So don't imagine now you have a 150 MB application and then I have to download it. You can imagine how many apps. Okay, let me say each and every one of us on this call probably has at least 20 applications on their smart devices. Now imagine all of those devices probably have 150 or 200 MB APK size. That will probably choke up all your storage. Your RAM will be overworked and all of that. You will definitely not enjoy your phone again. So put yourself in your user's feet and reduce the APK size. And then how to do that, as I said earlier, is make your images less heavy, make them to be very, very light and all of that. Minimize the way you also store data and all of that on your users' devices. Now, I will not want to download an application that drains my battery. You don't want to download an application that consumes most of your battery life. Imagine you build an application that is being used by a lot of people and then just keeps on draining your battery. The truth is, over time, your users will most likely uninstall your application and probably find an alternative. So they might just Google the competitor for this application and they just download it because it saves them battery. Nobody wants to download an application that just consumes their battery fast and all of that. So build with that in consideration. Now, when your users are interacting with your software and they get stuck, who will help them out? How will they figure things out? Now, when building your application, you should always be aware of this factor. Your users might get stuck in your application and all of that. Try to solve that problem by probably including, say, a chat or a feedback session in your application where they can easily communicate or they can easily reach out to customer support for help. Personally, I've used a lot of application, and then when I get stuck and then there's no one to help me, I probably uninstall the app. If the app has an alternative and all of that, I'll just go with the alternative. And if it doesn't, I just end up spending a lot of time trying to figure out. So try to solve that problem for your users. Make them feel it's easy for them to interact with your software, and then always be there for them when they need you. So you could say liaise with the customer team and all of that. Include a bot if you probably won't be online frequently, so that your bot can answer frequently asked questions before you come online, and that will really help the user when he gets stuck. Now, when building your application, remember we're talking about for the next billion users. Say you build an MVP and then you launch your application. Now, after a couple of months, your application has gained a lot of traction from users. You have a lot of people downloading and using your applications. You will most likely not be the only developer then on the team. You will have to now start bringing in other software engineers and team members to work on the same code base you built. Now, imagine you build that code base without having a good code architecture. So you have a messy code which is probably chopped up, no indentation, no comments, nothing. It's just there. It's just the code base that works. For you personally, it will be hard for you to understand the code over time. So you probably wrote the code this month and then say you got engaged with other things. After some time, you come back to the same code base. Instead of you to spend more time being productive, building more features and shipping out, you will spend the same time relearning what you wrote. Now, that applies also to your team. You don't want your team to spend weeks trying to figure out what you actually wrote. That's a very, very terrible thing to do to your team. Make sure you build the application with a clean code architecture. So that your team now, instead of spending, say, 2-3 weeks figuring out what this code does and all of that, they will spend that 2-3 weeks building a new feature and then shipping out to your users. So have in mind, you also always have a good clean code architecture on your code base, because you're not the only one going to be working on your code. See, over time, you get engineers and other people to team code base. So save them the stress of figuring out that same code and then give them the time to build more features and be more productive. Now, you will have to write tests. Imagine you build an application and then you ship it out. Now, when you ship out, there are a lot of things you probably have not tested, and then your users have to deal with that. That is not going to be nice at all, because that would probably spoil the reputation of your software. You can go in the way that you write unit tests and all of that while developing, or you could also do it, say, you do an initial beta test. So before an open beta, or before a beta test to all your users publicly, you could bring in few of your team or few of your early stage users to test your application and give you feedback. So I don't know how many of us on this call has probably watched the series Silicon Valley. So when Richard, one of the owner of PyPiper, built an application, he gave some of his users to test. Now, those of his users were not actually his users. They were more of his developer friends. So his developer friends tested the application and said it was cool. Now, when he launched the application, finally he discovered that his users don't really like the way the application is being interacted on, though it has an awesome feature. So the mistake there was, instead of having real life users test the application, you're giving out to your developers' friends, which will probably not be the ones they're going to be using the application. So find out who your early stage customers will be, or your early stage users will be, and then have a beta test, a closed beta test with them before actually shipping your application. That will save you a lot of stress. That will help you know where to effect corrections and all of that. So always test your application before launching, and then before launching also get your early stage users to test run your application and give you feedback, of course. So that's it for now. Thank you so much for joining me on this session. Thank you, droidCon, for giving me the privilege to speak. You can always reach me on the internet with at Adugam Ayuba, that Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, anywhere. It's just at Adugam Ayuba, and you can also send me an email at abel@softdrum.com. So now will be the time for questions. So if you have any questions, you can just drop them in the Slido, and then I'll read them aloud and answer it.